Hello, welcome into episode 2 of the Batcat Beat. My name is Daniel Hager, one of the Kentucky baseball beat writers for Kentucky Sports Radio, joined today with Derek Terry. Derek, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Daniel. I'm really appreciative of you having me on here. I know you've kind of had to work around my schedule a little bit. I couldn't make it earlier in the week when we planned it, so thank you for having me on. And I was trying to give a heads up. I was telling you before that I have a couple of cats running around here. I'm in the middle of a move, so if you see me trying to fight off some animals, just ignore it. We'll keep going and talk a little baseball.
Yeah, so since you weren't on here last week, kind of give everyone a rundown of what you've done in your past and kind of what you're doing now around the program.
Yeah, so I went to school at UK, got a journalism degree, and I covered the program. Started covering baseball for the Kentucky Colonel back when I was in college. My first season was 2015, and covered that through 2021. I left journalism altogether, well, sports writing, in 2022. And I was still on the side. I started a newsletter last year, did a little bit of that, and I did enjoy it, but being by myself, it was a little harder to put out content around my work schedule. So joined up the KSR last summer. Haven't done as much. I think in the summers is when I come around a little bit more, transfer portal season, draft season, things like that. But you've done a great job. Wanted to tell you, covering the team the last few years. And used to cover all sports UK, but baseball was the one that I kind of wanted to keep writing about. I've not really felt the need to write about anything else. So enjoying it. And it's been nice to see the program once I stopped covering them, every day for the last few years. They've kind of turned it around. So I know it's a fun time to cover the team.
What was your favorite team that you got to cover while you were doing it every year?
Yeah, very easily the 2017 team. Probably my favorite UK team I covered of any sport, actually. I might have just been a good time of my life, too, though. I was a senior at UK that year and graduated that spring. But that was a team that was really, really unexpected. I mean, it was Mingion's first year. I'd interned with D1Baseball.com that semester, and I remember writing the preseason preview, and it was just like, probably a little bit of a rebuild. Like Evan White was on that team. He was good. They had lost all of their pitching basically the year before, all the weekend starters, and then Sean Jelly ended up being SEC Pitcher of the Year. Riley Mahan had a great year. Tristan Pompey. The regional, I think, when they played NC State in that championship game was probably the best atmosphere I can really remember being at a baseball game even now. Well, college baseball game. But that was a great team, really fun team. Had a great season. And like I said, one of my favorite all-time UK teams of any that I've watched.
Yeah, fast forward to this year's team. Kind of give your thoughts on what you've seen with this year's team, pitching, offense, just kind of the overall vibes of what you've gotten more than halfway through the season.
Yeah, I think they've kind of struck me as overachievers a little bit. This is a team I wrote. Actually, the last story I did for KSR was a preview to start the season, and I felt like a good goal for this team was just to get back to a regional. I thought kind of with how the program has been, you wanted to show, I think for Nick Mingione in particular, you wanted to show that it wasn't just a one-off, that, they had been down for a few years, kind of unexpectedly hosted a regional last year, and I think you wanted to come back this year with the group that they had and show that you were trying to build some continuity and some consistency within the program. And to be in a spot, I think it was like around April 15th or something. It was the middle of April. It's as early as I can ever remember that Kentucky more or less had a regional resume already. I mean, they got to 14 wins, which is normally kind of the sweet spot. To at least you'll probably make it in the SEC at 14 wins, and they're already at 16. And I know they've kind of hit a skid here the last 2 weekends, but the way I look at it, Daniel, they're at a spot here. It's May 1st. They still tied for first in the SEC. They're playing Arkansas this weekend. You really kind of still control your own destiny to accomplish much bigger things than what I probably thought they would be going for at this point in the season. So 16 SEC wins, you're probably looking, I think Florida and Vanderbilt after this upcoming series. So some wins potentially still there on the table. It should be in a pretty good spot to try to stay in that top 8. I think that's what you're really looking for at this point. I mean, I would be stunned with what they've done and what they have left if they're not at least hosting a regional. But you're trying to stay in that top 8, so your path to Omaha potentially will be through Kentucky Proud Park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like last year they hosted a regional with 16 SEC wins, and they're already there now with 9 SEC games left. So barring like I don't even really see, unless they go 0 for 9 and lose the first game in Hoover, and they might even get a bye. So I mean, it's like you can't even do that. But I know, like me and you talked at the beginning of the season, we were like, is this team really good or what? Because you're looking at Nicholson, who was struggling, and the fall off from Gillum to him was kind of rough at the time. We weren't sure how the pitching staff was going to respond, and they started off the season really well. I know the bullpen had like that 21 inning no runs innings at that one point. So yeah, it's been really a good series, good season so far. Up until maybe these last 2 series, the Cats dropped back-to-back series for the first time this season over the weekend at South Carolina. Lost the first game 5-6, won the second game 15-13, and were blanked in the final game 10-0. Let's go back to that first game. Kentucky has a 3-run lead in the 9th inning, and Johnny Hummel comes in, who I have been extremely high on. I believe his ERA at the Tennessee series, it was 0.9. It might have gotten up to 1.12 on Friday night, and so I thought that was a done deal. He's going to come in and shut that down. Their offense hadn't really done anything at all, and then they go up and hit solo home run, solo home run, solo home run. Byers comes in, and first pitch Byers throws, walk-off 2-run home run. Derek, what did you think about that? Did that surprise you, how that kind of went down?
I thought it was really surprising. I'm looking at his numbers. I'm pretty sure every run he's given up this year, I think he's given up 6 solo home runs, if I'm looking at this right. So what I think was tough about that too was looking at that South Carolina lineup. Those weren't really guys that had done a lot of damage this year either. I think all of those guys, I think one of the guys who had a home run, I think he had 6 on the season. That was the most. The other 2 had fewer than that. One was a pinch hitter that came in. So the way that game played out was definitely – that's a tough one to swallow because it was a close game throughout. It was 1-1 going to the 9th. Kentucky scores 3 runs in the top of the inning. And you feel good about it. Like you said, Hummel coming in, and you get out of the inning after giving up 3 home runs, take the lead again in the top half, and you can't hold on. I mean, that's a difficult way to lose a baseball game. And I think it shows kind of still how small these margins are in the SEC. When you're talking about the Tennessee series the weekend before, Friday game, they won a close one. Saturday, had chances to get back into it. I think they ended up losing by 5, so it wasn't like they were right there. And then Sunday, again, you have a lead, 6-2, and end up losing a game that you score 11 runs and had 17 hits, brought the tying run to the plate in the 9th, couldn't quite get the job done. Those are tough games to lose. And when you're in an SEC race like this, all those games kind of add up. But yeah, with the pitching, I mean, I don't know if you want to move to that yet. I see it up next on the slide.
We can get into that. Yeah.
Dan Roselle, he always does a great job. He really does. This is last year's staff. I think was maybe their best top to bottom, certainly since he's been here. Probably going back to 2017, it was probably the best group that they've had. And that was a group that kind of carried them last year in the regional in particular, when you had guys like Austin Strickland who were able to step up. That on paper this year definitely seemed to be more of a concern. That they might have been a few arms short. And I think you're starting to see that play out a little bit. But to get to where they were, though, 15-1 in the SEC, when the guy you thought would probably be the star, Travis Smith, he's in the bullpen now. Trey Pusser from College of Charleston's come in. He's done really well. What did he strike out 11 or 12 the other night against South Carolina?
I think it was 11.
Yeah. So, Dan's always going to get the most out of guys. Whatever he's got, he's going to find a way to get some good production. But that is a group right now that seems to be struggling a little bit. Mason was their best bullpen guy last year. He's done really well. He's still the guy that, whether I'm right or wrong, like if they're in a spot where you're trying to get to Omaha, like he's the guy that I probably want on the mound. And he's had a couple tough outings. It happens from time to time. But that seems to be a group that you're kind of wondering, who's kind of going to get them out of this funk. Because there was a time last year, too, when the team started to skip. What I was going back to, the original thoughts is this team every year in April is really tough for Kentucky baseball. Ever since I covered the team, like when you get to the SEC, it's a grind. They typically slip a little bit. This group pretty much lasted longer than any other that I can remember in avoiding that slide. But when you do look at kind of what's happened, it's got to be the pitching, right? That's kind of what's not held up. I go back to that Tennessee game for Kentucky baseball. If they're able to score 11 runs and crank out 17 hits, like you're going to assume they're probably going to win that game. But Tennessee's a great offense, probably the best in the country. If not, I'd say probably the best in the country. So you can kind of write it off a little bit. But yeah, to get blank 10-0, the vibes probably aren't great right now. But coming back to Kentucky Proud Park, I think you look for Pusser here to step up and have a good outing, set the tone again like he did last week. But between Nyman, Mason, and Travis Smith, I think those three guys, that's who you're going to count on, because as you get a little bit deeper with the bullpen, you have guys like Nove who step in, do very well. Trying to think of some of the other guys that they've had, who, Hummel has been pretty consistent up until then. I mean, that was a guy that they really liked in the preseason who's done that. And, I will say, to the depth, you kind of hope there'd be a few more younger guys maybe that had stepped up. I think Ben Cleaver was a guy they really had hoped would be able to provide some innings, but he was coming back from an injury and probably not built up enough to help at this point. So, between these veteran guys, you gotta find some guys who can step up here and stop this skid a little bit and get back to playing some winning baseball.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Cam O'Brien out of the bullpen. He's been really well. He's done really well. Him and Novi have kind of been the top two guys. I know O'Brien struck out 6 of the 7 guys that he faced over the weekend before he gave up either it was a hit or a run. One of the guys that's really surprised me who was struggling was Dominic Nyman, because he was like rolling. He had 14 and a third innings pitched like in a row where he just gave up 1 combined run. He shut out Alabama, who I think honestly is a better offensive team than South Carolina is. And so that's why that really caught me off guard. I thought that would be a really nice bounce back game for him. And then 2 weeks in a row now, he hasn't even made it to the second inning. And so that's really going to come back to bite them if these guys just aren't able to go deep in these games, and you've got to burn a Cam O'Brien or burn a Jackson Novi in a Friday game, or when you get deeper. And I don't know. It's just and Mason as well. I think Mason gave up 5 earned against Tennessee and gave up 9 earned on Sunday against Carolina. Bouncing back to that, we'll go back to Dom's game, which was on Saturday. He gave up the 6 early runs. UK went down 6-0 or 6-1 after the first inning. Went on a run, scored 11 unanswered. Carolina went on their own run, came back within 2, but they shut it down. Nolan McCarthy made an awesome grab in center field with the bases loaded to rob Gavin Casas of potential another walk-off. Did anything from that game stand out to you, just kind of like the resilience of holding them off where they didn't do that the night before?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of that was the game too that really could have shifted, which in hindsight, Sunday's game went poorly. But to rally back after getting down early in that game, I was getting some text messages. It felt like the vibes were pretty bad because I got down early right after, you blow a game the night before. But to battle back, I think it really showed the depth of the offense. I mean, that was something coming into the season that I would not have thought would have been the case. I mean, I thought the offense had pretty good potential because they were bringing back Burks. Petrie had a year under his belt. You hope that maybe James McCoy would take that leap. And at times this year, I think he has. They got McCarthy back. Waldschmidt I'm a huge fan of Ryan Waldschmidt. But he got injured at the Cape last summer and didn't know when he would be back. But he's come back, and I think he's clearly been their best player from what I've seen this season. But yeah, with this offense, guys like Ryan Nicholson who started slow have come around. That was good to see, and it makes you feel like you have an offense here that you're not really out of any game, and that's a good thing to have. And the veterans on this team, I think, help a lot, because there's a time this year. I mean, of course, Stanley, you've covered the whole season. Like a game that I went to, I think it was against Lipscomb. I went with my wife, and like Kaya Scargett had to play because Grant Smith got hurt, and like Ethan Hindle was starting. It was a really young team, and at that point, you just kind of didn't really know how this thing was going to look. Like, were some of these transfers that they took, maybe not good enough? Which Daly was out. I think he had gotten hurt.
Yeah. But
the way it settled in with this kind of the regular 9 that they've been running out there, it's a very old team at this point. Guys have been in this program, been in other programs. Someone like Mitch Daly, who's played in Omaha, started at Texas, who I think he's a great selling point too. I know some people I think had questions about the transfer portal for this summer. I think Jackson Gray last year and Mitch Daly this year are great examples of guys who have come here and gotten better. Because Jackson Gray was very up and down offensively throughout his career and had a great, probably their most valuable hitter last year. I think Jackson probably was. And then Mitch Daly this year, his season numbers, I mean, he's doing really well. You know, he's on a 292, 438, and 517. I mean, it's your third baseman who was really a shortstop his whole career, slugging over 500. And he's hit 6 home runs. So this offense is very good. And it's held up in SEC play. I put out a tweet a few nights ago, or I guess it's probably over a week ago at this point, at the end of the Tennessee series. Like, they're top 3 in almost any stat that matters in the SEC. So I think you have to give a lot of credit to certainly Nick Emirati for what he's kind of done with that, because he was a big part of it last year, but you know, Will Coggin was too, who left for Georgia. I mean, Will did a really good job, and then Cousineau stepped in. Austin Cousineau has kind of stepped in this year, and those two have really done a good job, I think, keeping this offense going. And they're kind of fun to watch. I know people last year, I mean, it was like kind of to an extreme how much they bunted, and I know it kind of drove people crazy. But this year, it's like kind of, yeah, they might drop down a bump, but they also, especially Ryan Nicholson, it seems like they have some more pop this year than what they had at times last year. So they can still hit home runs. They can still get on base. They steal bases. It really is a fun offense to watch. And I'm sure it's pretty tough to play against at times too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Before we move on to the Sunday game, I wanted to kind of brag on Ryan Walshman a bit more. This is a guy who tore his ACL over the summer, and we didn't know when he was going to play. I know we asked him, Coach Mingione at Media Day, when he was expected back. And he said mid-April. And then in the second game of the season, he pinch hit. And we were all like, where did this come from? Like, literally nobody expected it. And so he started off kind of slow, kind of got things rolling. And then as soon as SEC play started, I mean, he has really been one of the best players in SEC plays. 14 stolen bases against SEC teams, that's first. 35 hits, which is second. He's batting .422 with a .524 OBP, .723 slugging, 7 doubles, and awesome. He's really rolling right now. His defense has also been really good. The entire defense has been really good, especially in the outfield. James McCoy, Nolan McCarthy. Derek, have you expected this kind of season from Waldy this season?
Yeah, I felt really good about him if he was healthy. You know, I didn't know how he would come back from the injury, but yeah, his SEC numbers are, like you just showed. I mean, they're absurd. He's OPSing over 1,200 right now, and for the season, he's walked more than he struck out. And that was a guy a couple of years ago when UK started recruiting him. Even though he was at Charleston Southern, he just got a good feeling. He was high up in basically every offensive category in the Big South as a freshman. Just overall, he was one of the best players in the whole league. And sometimes, especially in baseball recruiting, I think more than some of these other sports, like, I'm not so sure that the ranking system has really caught up. Like, football, it's pretty good now. Basketball, it's pretty good. Like, On3, 24/7, these are really good. Most of the top guys are going to be able to hit on. With baseball, you can still get some of the top guys, but a lot of people fall through the cracks. I think Waldschmidt was one of those guys. But yeah, I mean, for his SEC numbers, 422, 524, 723, with 7 doubles and 6 home runs, and only 16 strikeouts with 15 walks. So, like I said, I think he's probably. I mentioned Mason earlier as a guy. You know, if you're trying to get to a super regional, who do you want out there? I think at the plate, it's clearly Waldschmidt. I mean, I think he's going to give you your best at bat. You have the best chance of something good happening, him getting on base. You know, the goal is not to make an out, right? Like, I think he's the guy that fits that category best. There's other good players. I mean, Nick Lopez is a guy that when they took him last summer, I wasn't really sure, you know, what the goal was there, because he'd been at like Illinois, Chicago. He played some JUCO, was decent at USC. Wasn't a bad player at USC, but I just kind of wondered, how did he fit? You know, Kentucky's always liked taking those pretty old players that could provide some depth. And he kind of carried them at times in the non-conference, and he's kept up pretty well. He's still getting on base at like a 400 clip. And then Petrie, I think those three, in addition to Nicholson, who's obviously provided a lot of power, I think that's been a really good core. But I mean their whole offense. I'm just looking at the numbers right now in SEC. You got Waldschmidt hitting 422, Nicholson's 364, McCarthy's 361, Smith 324, Lopez 317, and Daly 301. So what is that's like 2/3 of your lineup that are still hitting over 300 this deep. I mean, there's only 3 series left. So, I mean, they're putting up some of the best numbers I've seen in the conference of any Kentucky baseball offense.
I kind of touched on this last week with Ryan Nicholson. Like, he committed, and then Stephen Klein of Sanford committed, if you remember that. And I was kind of like, where are these guys going to fit? And I kind of think, what if Klein ended up coming and he played first and Nicholson had a DH and Lopez – I mean, you can't put him in the field because his defense he shot that early in the season. So that was just kind of a wild thought. Nicholson is a guy that I've really been impressed with because I know he's talked about this in our postgame sometimes. He was really getting in his head at the beginning of the season. Mingione kind of said the same thing, that there were times where he didn't really know what he was doing. And then he'd come up here and he never really quit. And now he's hit 12 home runs in 11 games or something ridiculous like that. His glove has even gotten better. I kind of ragged on his glove at the beginning, but he's only made 1 or 2 errors since the first kind of stretch of the season where he struggled a bit. Like I said, go back to the Sunday game. They were blanked 10-0 by Carolina in 7. Ryan Waldschmidt went 0 this was his first 0 game, and it was like 12 games or so. His multi-hit game streak was broken, and his hit streak was broken. I know you didn't get to catch this game. You didn't miss anything. Mason Moore gave up 9. UK notched just 5 hits. That was their lowest in a game this season. And it was really kind of depressing to see them go down like that after such a high the night before. It would have been a really big win to come out and kind of get that one and go stay a game and a half above Tennessee. I know they're just a half game above Tennessee now. How important do you think losing that last game was, as opposed to if they were able to have won it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the morale aspect to get beat like that. This team really, since maybe the Kennesaw series, really hadn't gotten beat bad. They'd really played good baseball for a long time. I mean, this was a series. I think, South Carolina I think they're a solid team, and that historically has been a pretty tough place for Kentucky to go down there and win. Really, South Carolina in general as an opponent has been hard for Kentucky. I know they swept them last year, but I think they gotten swept in Lexington the last time they came up there. The only reason I remember that is because I actually got married that weekend, and I remember I was driving to South Carolina on the day of the final game, and things weren't going great for the program at that time. They've really turned it around since then. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the SEC race, I think it's awesome we're still talking about this, honestly, because they've won 1 SEC championship in the whole program's history in 2006. So you're at a spot where, for as big as that Tennessee series was, and it was huge. I mean, Kentucky was 14-1 going into that series, a rival coming to town, a really good team in Tennessee. I mean, I would encourage people, if you were excited about Kentucky baseball for that series, you should be just as excited, if not more, for. I mean, this game has this series. I mean, these 3 games coming up they will matter a lot in terms of who ends up winning the SEC championship, the regular season SEC championship. So, at a school like Kentucky, I think this matters a lot for, in sports. I think everyone's expectations are all relative to, what gets celebrated a lot at one school. If Arkansas wins the SEC, I think they'll be proud, but that's a program that has been to Omaha several times. Like, they're trying to break through and win a national championship, right? For Kentucky, I mean, if they're the 2024 SEC champions, we'll talk about this season for forever, probably. So it's all kind of intertwined. I mean, you need these wins against a team like Arkansas to just keep improving your overall resume from that standpoint. But, it's a huge series, but it's also pretty close at the top 2, Dan. I mean, you mentioned Tennessee at 15-6. You've also got Texas A&M at 15-6, and Kentucky won't see them. But this is a very important series. I mean, it goes without saying. I think it's awesome that Kentucky's in a spot where it's lined up this year that you have these big series at home at Kentucky Proud Park. We're able to get these great crowds and really kind of use it as a run up to what will hopefully be a super regional appearance as well. At the very least, it's going to be a regional appearance, and you need to take care of that. But having these big games at home, I think it's going to condition the fan base, to be ready for these games. And I think it's going to help the team be in these environments. So that would kind of be my call probably to the fan base, that if you can get out this weekend and provide another great home field advantage, it's going to pay off in the long run for sure. And I think as a Kentucky, just as someone who, I'm not an old head like some of the guys who have covered the program for decades, but these seasons don't always come around like this for Kentucky. And I think in the moment, if you can be out there, I would really recommend it.
And they've really got to start winning these games when they get these record crowds, because last year they lost to Louisville when they had their record crowd. One of the regional games they dropped with the record crowd, and then 2 of the 3 against Tennessee they dropped. Like you said, Arkansas coming to town, number 2 team in the country by D1 baseball. They have probably the best pitcher in the country in Hagen Smith. I believe he goes Friday nights. So if you want to see one of the best players in college baseball, that would really be a matchup to see. Saturday, a big Derby game. So I'd recommend getting out to that. It's at 2 o'clock. Derby's not till 6:57. And then the series finale is at 1 o'clock. Have you seen what's been going on with Arkansas and the dugout and kind of the allegations that's been going on thrown towards?
No, I haven't.
The Texas A&M coach went on a podcast and alleged that an SEC team they'd been caught with a monitor in their dugout or something like that. And he kind of threw something in that this team is hitting really low on the road, or really low at home and high on the road, or no, high at home and low on the road. And so people kind of sleuthed that out, and people are thinking that's Arkansas. So that's kind of like a fun little added tidbit that we can throw in there. It's a good thing that this thing isn't in Fayetteville, so we won't have to deal with that. But what do you really need to see this weekend as they head into the final stretch of their season?
Just going back to the pitching, I think if you're going to make a run, that's what they got to get that figured out. I mean, this is like I said, I think they've overachieved to this point. I mean, there was bound to probably be some regression to start at 15-1. I think this is a team that they've managed to do a really good job, the coaching staff, finding and developing players that are very, very solid college baseball players. Kentucky is not going to have a lot of top 10 round draft picks. I think it's kind of an indicator you look at with a lot of these schools. Like Arkansas will probably have way more guys drafted. Tennessee is going to have way more guys drafted than like what Kentucky is. So even with some regression that's been built in, if you get the pitching back on, I think the offense is going to stay pretty good. That was an anomaly what happened on Sunday to get shut out. This team's going to be too good over 9 innings to get blanked like that a lot. But it's not. You don't want to be trying to win games by having to score 8 or 9 runs, every time. Like they got to 15 on Saturday and still barely won. We mentioned the Sunday game against Tennessee when they scored 11 runs and lost. So that's absolutely the indicator to be looking for right here. If they can get the pitching staff, get these guys settled back in, that's going to be the key to making a run. And, if it turns out you're maybe 1 or 2 arms short for the season, to me, when you look at how this might play out, if they end up coming up short of their ultimate goals, which I'm sure as they get to Omaha and compete for a national title, it'll probably be because they just maybe didn't have enough pitching. So it does put some pressure on guys like Nyman and guys like Moore and Pusser to continue throwing well. And for when Travis Smith makes his appearances, Travis looked great at the game I was at against Tennessee on Friday night. He was a couple weeks back. He was really good. That's a guy who I still think his Pierce stuff is as good as anyone's on the staff. So he's a pretty important piece to this moving forward. So all those guys, that's where it's going to be. And I think as long as they come out this series and hit the ball well, I'm not going to be concerned about the offense and what happened on Sunday.
Yeah. Travis was a guy, he'd been really good out of the bullpen. I know he pitched prior to the his Tennessee outing last week. I think he pitched 9 innings out of the pen, just giving up 1 run until he gave up 5 runs. But I thought that we'd see him in the Carolina series. I think that he would have followed Mason on Sunday if that thing wasn't already way out of the water. So, looking forward to seeing him. This weekend, I'd kind of like to see some of the lower in the lineup guys like really, really get things going. James McCoy, like you mentioned, has been kind of up and down all season. It's like he'll go like he said on Saturday, he homered and broke his streak. He was 2 for 30 at the plate or something like that. And it's like he's known for kind of going through those really rough patches. So really would like to see him get going. That's like he did at the end of the last season, and Nolan McCarthy as well. As part of the returning guys, I think Nolan McCarthy has really impressed me more than anybody. I don't know if you feel that way. He was kind of a rotational piece last year with McCoy, as Waldschmidt and Jackson Gray had the outfield. And I mean, I think McCarthy, like you said, he's batting over 300 in SEC play, 8 home runs, and then, like you said, his defense has been awesome. Did you expect? I know we talked about Waldschmidt already, but did you kind of expect this kind of breakout from Nolan this year?
To the extent that he's, with how good he's been, probably not. Honestly, I mean, he's still hitting 361 in the league. I kind of look at the on base more than the batting average, and he's 675, which is the second best or third best. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong category. He's 398 on base. His slugging is very good, 675. He is one of those guys that it's really good, a good program piece. He redshirted as a freshman, didn't do a whole lot as a freshman, got into the rotation like you mentioned last year. And honestly, in this era of college baseball, Nolan was a guy that I wasn't sure if he was going to stay at UK over the summer, because they brought in Todd Crittenberger. You knew Waldschmidt was coming back. McCoy was coming back. They liked Lucas Schramm, who played a lot earlier in the year. He's not played as much lately. Patrick Herrera is another guy they like, who was traditionally an infielder but has played some outfield. There are a lot of guys that they had in the outfield. Nolan was someone who hit a home run in the Super Regional last year, had a big regional, if I remember right, last year.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of guys that could have gone. He could have gone. He's from Michigan. He probably could have gone to any Big Ten school if he wanted to, and started. But he stayed within the program, and has been a huge piece to this team. I mean, he's one of those guys for sure that, like, he started left field right this year because Waldschmidt was out
at the beginning.
But this was a guy that was probably competing for a spot the whole fall, and he seems to be a pretty good clubhouse guy too. It seems like he strikes. I don't know any of these kids personally, but he strikes me as someone that I'd say his teammates probably like quite a bit. Really good competitor. Was it the Tennessee series where he was kind of getting into it with the dugout? Am I remembering right? Yeah. He's one of those guys that I'm sure the teammates all get behind. But he's had a great season, and I would assume he's setting himself up to probably be picked this summer in the MLB draft. He's already been in college for 4 years, so he has another year if he wants it. And I'm sure UK would love to have him back for another season. But I think he's probably someone that when scouts come to Lexington, they probably have taken a little bit closer look at him than maybe what they intended to coming into the year.
You brought up Ty Crittenberger's name. I kind of forgot that he's on the roster. Like, he was the guy that I thought would really be like their everyday center fielder, and no one's kind of grabbed that.
Well, when you look at the roster construction this year, I don't fault the coaching staff for how they built it necessarily. But if you look at the bench, like I mentioned Herrera, we've not really talked about Ruben Church and Ty Crittenberger. Those are 3 veteran guys. Those are upperclassmen that don't really play that much. And space wise, it is what you don't. You want some depth, but we mentioned Gargett earlier. We mentioned Hendel. Like, I think they had a few freshmen who maybe were a little bit further along than what they would have thought. And just if you could have maybe gone to the portal and gotten 2 more arms, maybe you feel a little bit better about where they are. And I think that was something that was, it was brought up to me by someone close to the program earlier this year, that this was a potential cause for concern when it came to the pitching staff. And I think that'll be something to address in the summer and future teams that they build here at UK.
Yeah, they're really going to have to rebuild their whole starting staff, I think, over the offseason. With Mason, I assume, will probably go to the draft. Nyman's done. Poozer's done. And then Travis will probably go to the draft. So do you know if Cleaver could be kind of a long-term starting piece, or is he kind of a shorter inning guy?
No, I think the plan, if healthy, I think they really would have preferred Cleaver be the midweek guy this year and step in. He was someone that in high school for last year's class, 2023, he really kind of had the most buzz potential. He had scouts coming to watch him in Tennessee that spring. He ended up having a little bit of an injury. I didn't have to have surgery or anything, but it kind of shut him down. It really kind of took him off the radar. That's how he ended up at Kentucky. And he's kind of dealt with injuries the whole time he's been here. But him and then the other guy too, who if you're just kind of a casual fan, you might not be as in the weeds. Tommy Skelding from Ohio. He had Tommy John surgery in high school. He was another one that was pretty highly thought of in terms of future pieces. But Cleaver, if he can stay healthy, have a good summer, I think he'll probably come in next year as a guy that I don't know that it'll be like competing for a Friday spot or anything like that, but he would be someone internally within the program I would think has the best chance to have a pretty big role next season. And Drew Lafferty as well. I mean, he's been the midweek guy. Like I don't know that Lafferty's quite in the spot that he can step in and be a midweek or a rotation guy next year, but he could be someone who's moved to the bullpen.
Yes,
and he'll be someone that probably gets added here once regionals start.
That's kind of what I've been saying. As a starter, I'm not really sure on him if he started off the season great, but as the competition kind of got better, he really struggled. So, but he's young, he's promising, and so looking forward to what happens next with him next season. Move on to the home stretch, kind of talking about UK's final 11 games. They've got these series with Arkansas at home this weekend. They've got a midweeker at Xavier next Tuesday. Before they head to Gainesville for the weekend series with Florida, who is probably the most bipolar team in all of college baseball. Then they've got a midweeker with Wright State, and then they finish out the season at home against Vanderbilt. Derek, how do you kind of see these final 11 games playing out for UK?
I feel good about the midweek games. I mean, they can get weird, but I'll give Minjian a lot of credit. Even in the years that they weren't very good, I mean, they were pretty good at like taking care of midweek games. That used to drive people crazy with Gary Henderson. It's like it just seemed like he didn't care about midweek games. And they would. I think I remember one time I covered a game. I think it was Zach Logue who had started, and it had I think he was throwing he threw 4 or 5 innings and didn't give up any runs or anything. And he brought in Zach Pop, ended up losing that game. And it was like, why did you make this change? But they've done really well in midweek games under Minjian this year in particular. I know they dropped the one at Samford, I believe. Yeah, at Samford. But with just 2 left, I think at Xavier, that's a good coaching staff, by the way, at Xavier. I know a lot of people have respect within college baseball for that staff, but I think they'll win that one. Arkansas, I mean, this is probably the best team left that they'll face in the regular season. So I'll say they take 1 of 2 there, beat Xavier. The Florida series is kind of scary to me. You mentioned them, they're a team that is way, way, way underperformed. Yeah. But talent-wise, they're still have a lot of guys that are pretty good. And on the road, I think you would love to see UK take 2 out of 3 there. That would be a big deal. And I actually do like them to win the series to close the year against Vanderbilt. So I'd probably put it somewhere in the 8-3 range would be my guess. Lose the series to Arkansas, but hopefully win the next 2, at least taking 2 out of 3. And then, or was it maybe my math might have been off there? There's a reason I went into journalism. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 4 is what I was looking for there. 7 and 4 this year.
Yeah, I think I'll go 7 and 4 with you also. The Florida series, like you said, really intrigues me because I really want to see how Minjian deals with Jack Caglianone. He's done really good with dealing with star players this year. Like Charlie Condon came into KPP and they did not give him anything to hit. Ethan Petrie was kind of an afterthought in the Carolina series. He was their best player, and I mean Cole Messina was over him, Blake Jackson was over him, Kennedy Jackson was over him, and so they've done a really good job at kind of stopping the big name guys from doing stuff. So I think I'll go 7 and 4 with you. It'd be they really need to finish strong heading into Hoover, and hopefully they can clinch a bye. All right, we'll finish out here kind of taking some questions from KS Board. KSR Plus right now, special offer, $1 for 2 months if you use code UK1. Heading over to the board, the first question we've got is from JT Davis, 25. He asked, why does it feel like we're struggling at the wrong time when coming down the stretch of the postseason? I think it's pretty obvious. Like the schedule has just gotten much better. Like this happens every season. Like UK got really lucky to play the conference schedule that they had gotten to start the season. You got Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama was a really good team, and they just
Mhm.
dominated them. And so um, that's like it always happens when the competition goes up. You just want to give like your 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's they did a lot of work in the early part of the schedule. It's good how well UK performed to give itself a little bit of buffer because they're 16-5 overall, and everyone's a little panicky about like what's going on, and they're still sitting here today, tied for first in the SEC. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely been competition level. And you're right, like that Alabama series. I mean, that's a quality team. Like I think they're still ranked, right? Like I want to say I saw a clip of them the other day. The West is tough. That's I mean the East is good too, but the West, you got like Alabama's fourth place in the West and is for sure a tournament team. So that's why it seems like they're struggling a little bit. Is just these good teams, and even if South Carolina's another team, like that's going to be a tournament team. Every team they play is good. You don't get a whole lot of like they played Missouri early in the year. Missouri's not very good. Auburn's turned out to be not good at all. But outside of that, like most of these teams are pretty solid. Ole Miss is another team that's kind of not had a very good season, but ultimately still really good coaching staff, good players on it. And UK, managed to take 3 games from them as well. But a lot of the teams you're seeing right now will be teams that I'm not exaggerating. I legitimately think all have a shot to like get to Omaha. Any team, depending on the regional that they're in, could get out of. This is a very, very, very good league.
Yeah. Derek, this is a question that probably is more catered towards you. This question asks, can you fill in the novice collegiate baseball fan on baseball recruiting and what UK's recruiting potential for next season looks like?
Yeah, I mean, 2 separate things now with the portal, which UK has utilized a lot. I mean, really, truthfully, turned around Mingion's tenure at UK. That was an area I thought high school recruiting they really struggled with for a few years. And then portal evaluations, I thought they have done a tremendous job over
Yeah.
2 coaching staffs. That's where I'll give Will Coggin a lot of credit. Jake Scott, who used to be at UK. These guys, they didn't have really any NIL money to play with here. Like you're trying to like project how guys who are playing in smaller conferences would project. And I mentioned Jackson Gray earlier in this podcast as someone that they saw something in and they did a great job. You had Guilfoyle, right, a few years ago, who came from Lipscomb and like maybe had the best season of any reliever UK's had. Like they have done a really good job. And for this summer, you mentioned earlier, basically the whole rotation's gone. Their everyday 9, I want to say, is either graduating or is draft eligible. I don't think they start a single guy right now who, like, you might have to replace a whole 9 next year as well. So they do have some guys internally who I think will step in. Gargett has a good chance. Hindle has a good chance. Griffin Cameron maybe. Eli Small, Schramm, guys internally who have a chance. But this class, I mentioned the baseball recruiting stuff earlier. I wouldn't even really look at the overall recruit number. Most of this class will get to campus. I would say everyone, there's 2 guys. Tristan Hunter is maybe getting some late, they call it helium in the baseball scouting community. I don't know that he's quite there yet where you are really worried, but Tyler Bell is the other one. That was an Austin Kuzno recruit who came in last summer. He was able to flip him. He was committed to Pittsburgh, decommitted, and now he's signed with Kentucky. He's like a top 150-ish draft prospect. And speaking of MLB draft, it's a whole different thing to discuss because a lot of it's not like a traditional. If you have any familiarity with the baseball draft, it's different just based on signing numbers, guys that get drafted in certain spots based on what they'll sign for. He will be one that you probably won't know an answer to until right up to the draft. But if he were to make it to campus, Tyler Belly's a middle infielder. He's probably got a great chance to. If he doesn't start, I would be surprised if he doesn't end up becoming a starter at some point during next season. But the portal, and it's hard to say right now, the portal will be a huge part of next season's team. I mean, it goes without saying, like that's going to be most of the team next year, I would guess. Maybe not most, but the pitching staff, it probably will be a lot of transfer guys. But offensively, it'll come down to how much do they think guys like Hindle, Gargett, Small, how much better can they get between now and next season. And that'll ultimately be the key to see what they take from positionally. And they do already have a few commitments because baseball's weird in that way too, where like guys have graduated. They got a kid from Transylvania, I forget his name. He's an outfielder who's like already committed. I want to say they got a Friday night starter from some small school who's already committed as well. Because Johnny Hummel was that way. We talked about him. Like Hummel played at Erskine or whatever, however you say that name of the college he was at. All last season he was committed to UK and played at a different school.
Yeah, it's like you go through the lineup, and it's going to be like Kentucky basketball are going to have like everyone's gone. Like Nichols will be gone. Petrie, probably, I'd say he'll get drafted. Grant Smith is gone. Daly's gone. And then McCoy, don't really know with him. He could be back or transfer somewhere else. I'm not sure. We kind of talked about that sometimes. And then McCarthy and Waldschmidt. But I have been really impressed with Gargett when he did have to step in and play. I think he's had just one hit this year, and it was a triple, and that dude was flying around the bases. And he's got a really good glove from what I've been told. Griffin Cameron started opening day or the second game, and he's got really good speed, so he's another guy that I'm pretty high on. Last question, and we'll get out of here. I know we kind of shot for 30 minutes, and we've gone 45 minutes, but all good. It happens. The last question is, what would our walk-up song be in baseball? What would yours be, Derek?
Walk-up song?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I don't know with the music that I listen to that I have a great answer for.
Is it a little Jason Isbell walk-up? Or
I do love Jason Isbell. The music I listen to, it might not suit like a walk-up song as much as maybe like, when pitchers warm up, if you came out of the bullpen or before a game. Like I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like maybe something like Go It Alone by Jason Isbell like might be what I would lean with. But another band I like the Alabama Shakes, like they probably have some more songs too, like Always All Right, something like that. I don't who asked that question on the
Phoenix Stevens asked that question.
Phoenix? Okay. Yeah. Phoenix causing me to break out in a sweat right here. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who I would walk out to. Who would you go with?
So if I was batting, I've always said this. I would always walk out to Gold on the Ceiling by the Black Keys. That's like growing up playing MLB The Show, that was like my favorite song. I would always come there, listen to it all the time. Black Keys has so many songs that could be used for that. And then coming out of the bullpen, like I don't think you can get any better than Hummel's Real Gone with like the Lightning McQueen intro video. Like I put it on the board, like the Tennessee game, the Tennessee game they won that Friday night. He came out like I've been covering that team for a year and a half, and that was like the first time I've gotten goosebumps up in the press box sitting there. I was like, holy cow. But yeah, I don't think you can get any better than Real Gone by Sheryl Crow. That's an awesome one.
Yeah, that's a fun question. I played high school baseball and everything. My music tastes have changed a lot since when I was in high school. But I would have had to put some more thought into that one. But yeah, I would. Isbell's by far my favorite artist, but not the kind of song probably like pump up a crowd though.
Yeah. All right. We'll get out of here. Derek, where can fans find you on social media?
Yeah, just Twitter or X, whatever people call it now. It's at Derek S. Terry. That's a spot. It's where I'll offer some thoughts. And then, like I said, this summer probably back to writing a little bit more than what I have been. But you do a good job. You've got us covered on the daily beat. I am not needed for that. So.
No, you as always, you guys can follow me at Daniel Hager KSR on Twitter /X, and then you can find me on KentuckySportsRadio.com. We will get out of here. I'm sure we'll be back next Wednesday recapping the Arkansas series and the Xavier game, which is on Tuesday. So we'll have some more stuff to talk about. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.